The Sony RX100 VII is the last of its kind, an ultra-powerful 1-inch compact camera with a staggering zoom range of 24 to 200, with a staggering price of $1,300 for a dated 2019 camera, which is equivalent to going to China and marrying leftover women. It may not make sense for everyone. However, in this video, I'm going to be making a case that, yeah, this camera is really good. It is fantastic. It has some major flaws, and we'll get into it. But first, we'll compare it to other cameras that you may have, that you may even consider, like the iPhone 15 Pro. That is a smartphone. Yes, it is a smartphone. It is very powerful as a camera. We're going to compare it to another, which is the DJI Pocket 3, which is a very popular camera. It is a very good camera, but how does it stack up to the RX100 VII? Okay, let's go back to the future briefly. This camera is 5 years old, and when it was released, it was a highly touted 20 megapixel, 20 frames per second stacked sensor camera that does 4K recording up to 960 frames per second for ultra slow motion. Modern day Sony autofocus, tracking autofocus, and very important at that time, a mic jack. Notice I am recording this video on the Rode Wireless Pro, and it's going straight into this camera, the RX100 VII. So the camera also has an intuitive EVF that is a pop-up. It has a compact pop-up flash. It also has a very compact battery, which unfortunately gives it compact battery life. Yes, that is one of the major flaws, and it has almost no grip. That's right, this camera is flat and small and compact, so small that it's smaller than most modern phones. But that's a good thing, because it is being used right now as a travel camera, and I am talking about travel cameras. On paper, this camera has some very nice looking specs, and I'll tell you, in practice, it's a mixed bag in that this isn't a brand new whiz kit type of deal. The app support is going to be limited at best, so if you wanting something that can upload to the cloud immediately, this probably isn't it. I mean, think about it. This camera has a micro USB, and I wouldn't suggest micro USB to anyone, but I'll make an exception for the RX100 VII. The other drawback is the lens. 24 to 200 is a f2.8 to f4.5 lens. And when you're going with these smaller sensors, like 1-inch sensors, the DJI Pocket 3 has an f2 lens, which brings in twice the amount of light. The ZV-1 has an f1.8 to f2.8 on the telephoto end. Granted, is a shorter, much shorter telephoto end. The ZV-1 Mark II similarly goes even wider, 1.8 to f2.8, and ZV-1F. Yeah, they're all faster than this camera, but you might say that, you know, f.8 to 4.5 is enough, especially if you're shooting outdoors a lot, and indoors you can just keep it on the wide and be safe. It's not going to be great, but it is going to be highly versatile. Now let's compare it to the iPhone 15 Pro or the Pro Max. It's going to be an interesting comparison because the iPhone is going to be with you anyhow. That might be it. That's going to be the main competitor to this camera. If you have an iPhone, which has arguably better focal range of 13, 24, and 77 or 105, why would you even consider the RX100 VII? Well, maybe because of the image quality. Well, I'll tell you that Apple Log and the main camera is likely going to produce better image quality than this camera. But can you really stick with just 24 millimeters and call it a day. At 13 millimeters, you're going to go to a smaller sensor and slower aperture. At 77 or 105, you're going to go to smaller sensor and smaller aperture. So you're going to take a hit. If you're going to the selfie camera, you take even a larger hit. That thing is just, it's just a tiny dot of a sensor. Okay, it's not even, there's just a dot. Okay, so when you're using any of those other sensors, especially indoors, they run into limitations quite fast. And if you think that the 1.5 stop difference for the RX100 lens is a lot, well, there's significantly more stops difference in lights when you're comparing these other sensors. We're talking about like 5 to 10 stops differences or something like that. It's going to turn into mush extremely fast. But the iPhone does have a lot of things good going for it. Okay, it does have water resistance. This thing is fully waterproof. And I don't have to worry about it getting wet if it's raining, if I go into a pool, if I'm at the ocean, if I'm at the beach, if I'm going to an island, which I am planning to do. The RX100 Mark VII is going to have to go in a Ziploc bag, while the iPhone just goes in my pocket. And that's all there is to it. The stabilization. The iPhone stabilization is darn near like GoPro. It works quite well. You don't have to think about it in any type of scenario. You just start recording and you're good. The controls on the screen, they're quite intuitive. There's a big screen. It's very easy to see what you're recording. And especially if you're getting up an age where your hair doesn't grow back on its own. Bruh. Yeah, the iPhone works really well. And being able to see the screen, being able to record, being able to change settings extremely quickly is where the iPhone shines. Where it doesn't is that all of my crap footage, all of my apps and app data, they share the same space. And now I have to either get more space for my iPhone, which only comes with 128 gigabytes. It costs hundreds more to add another 128. Or I believe the minimum next step up would be like 256 or 512. And then there's a top tier of 1 terabyte. I can get all of that, but it'll cost me a significant premium. And I'm not willing to pay that premium if I don't plan on using it. So the next logical step would be Apple Log or Apple Camera Raws. That requires a USB-C cable with a hard drive that can work too, but there's like no middle ground. It's either lower quality or the next step up is just too high of a quality. The bit rate is extremely high. So at that 24 megapixel plus the extremely high bit rate, you're going to outdo the RX100. But then in doing that, you're also going to deal with extremely large files. And, you know, I'm on vacation. I don't really want to deal with ultra large files. So it's just one of those things. And when everything is stored into your camera roll, you've got a plethora of crap images. Yes, there's crap images and video all over the place there. And now I want to separate that from the higher quality stuff. That means I'm just going to sit on my phone and then toggle away and swipe and delete. I can't just pull the card, transfer, and format. With the RX100, I can. And that's what I like. So I do use the iPhone 15 to record on my trip here. And do I use it often? I don't. I use it sparingly. I keep my RX100 on me all the time, and it's ready to go most of the time because it's just small. The iPhone 15, they're small. I mean, here's the other item that I use all the time too, and it's the DJI Pocket 3. Also small. This is forever going to be my B cam, and I'll get into it in a second. Okay, this thing is spectacular. It does 4K 120 at 10 bit, 4K 60 with audio, and has D-Log M, which in my opinion, it's not as good as S-Log 2, but it is pretty darn good as well. I mean, I'm just used to S-Log 2, and being able to share my LUTs from like the A7 Mark III. Okay, those LUTs, they just work on the RX100 Mark VII because it's S-Log 2, same profile, whatnot, and just minor adjustments, I could get them working. This thing, the range comparison only does 20 millimeters. That's why it's forever B cam. This thing does 24 to 200, and a lot of this room in here is not shown because it's shared with this lady called my wife, and she has clothes everywhere. And to be able to subtract that from this video, I just use a longer focal length, which I can do with the RX100 Mark VII. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just sitting away from the camera, focusing in on myself. And so it makes this telecompression. Okay, you can have that with this camera. With the Pocket 3, you can't. But despite that, here it is, the Pocket 3. Just think about this. I'm on an international trip, and space is a premium. And the fact that I still brought this along means that it is very worthy. It's just not my A camera. It is a very, very fun accessory to have. It is a gimbal. Everything is so smooth, silky smooth. All the movements. However, the flaws, you know, I've mentioned it in other videos, are really flawed. And I have the Scotty Makes Things case at home. That thing works great at home. For traveling, I know they have other stuff, but I decided to make my own case. There is something very unique and special about this case, and I'll get into it in another video, but it resolves a lot of the problems of the gimbal as well. The Pocket 3 is a gimbal. It's going to be fragile. See, when you're traveling with a gimbal, you can make really spectacular stuff, but it's going to be fragile, always fragile, and it's never going to be weather resistant. And you toss this into a plastic bag, you probably can't make it work. If you have an underwater case, there's just no underwater case that works well with this. It's designed for straight viewing, and it's going to have like a curved bubble effect. Just not a good idea. This Pocket 3 has great image quality, but the image quality is also tied to focal length. And the fact that I can't get further than 20 millimeters, it means that all my shots with this is all going to be wide. I have to get close to people. I have to get close to subjects, and that might not be possible, or it might be bothersome. And another compounding issue is that while this thing does have a better battery life than the RX100 Mark VII, the battery is built in. That means I use it amount of times. I'm not even sure how many cycles I've been through, but say after 1,000 cycles, this thing might not charge like new again. I might not get the full 2 hours of recording that I got when I first got it. This thing is just on a slow death. And yes, it is a slow death. And so that means that when its life is up, I have to send it either to a specialist to have it removed, the battery removed, and put in a new one, or buy another Pocket 3. I mean, think about this. The RX100 is a 5-year-old camera. It's still going. I can change out batteries. This, you can't. That is a major flaw. And sometimes the battery is dead on this camera, and it's because it has a sleep mode. I mean, anyone remember Windows Sleep? Windows Sleep gives nightmares because that thing would just drain away your battery at an unknown time. Well, this has a sleep mode. It doesn't really turn off. And because of that, you're at the mercy of faith in electronics. And just faith-based system on electronics. And because of that, that means that this thing can die on you. It can wake up dead. Or how does it work? If it wakes up, it's not. Anyhow. So it's happened to me before with this camera where I just turned it on and it just not reacting because it died in its sleep. And the way around that is to get a firmware update. But if there's no firmware updates, then what? Not really sure. Another thing that was part of my fault, you see this camera's bare. I brought it like that not because I wanted to. It's because I lost the Sony Life cover on this camera. On my trip here, I put it in my pocket. It fell out somewhere. So I've been carrying it like this the entire time. And now that I carry it like this, I accidentally turn it on more times than I would like to. And I've turned it on and record. And at the airport, I found out that, my Pocket 3 was warm. And that's because it was filming for 45 minutes. Filming absolutely nothing. Just on recording. Probably underneath, the seats or something. So it just does its own thing. And because of that little untrustworthiness, unpredictability, that's why I am hesitant to have this as my A-cam. And plus the focal length, 20 millimeters all the time, that's like being married to only one person. Bruh. Okay, maybe bad analogy, but you get the point. 20 millimeters all the time can get boring. There are plenty of folks that can work with it just fine, just one focal length, but I'm not one of those types of person. I can't get it working like that. Say if it was a 35 millimeter, then sure, yeah, you can get 35 millimeter working. But this isn't the case. It's 20 millimeters. Even then, just one focal length. I'm not that good where I can make that work. Okay. So overall, the image quality is great on this, and you can use this in lieu of an action camera, kind of, in that you could just take it around, walk. It's small, it's concrete. Look at this. This thing is so discreet, especially if I'm holding it like this. All you see is just my hand and a little camera head. But in fact, it's kind of a big chunky system that I have now. But it's great. It is a great little device in that when you want that silky smooth shot, you've got it. Another alternative would be the DJI Action 4. And I was really considering one or the other. Not both for this trip. My heart went with the Pocket 3 just because I wasn't really thinking right. I didn't know if I was going to go into the ocean. I probably will, but big deal. I'll lose out in some shots, and that's just the end of it, right? So some flaws of the RX100 Mark VII. I'm gonna get to that. Is 4K 30 S-Log 2 8-bit. 8-bit, sorry about that. Yeah, so it's 8-bit. It's not great, but it's still nice. Okay, it would be nicer if it had 4K 60. Even at 8-bit, it would be nice because clearly the sensor is stacked. It does 20 frames per second. It's fast enough, but Sony didn't give it. It would be too good, and it would probably overheat in, 5 seconds flat. The good thing is that I'm filming most of this in 1080p, and 1080p 60. 1080p 30 is really good on this camera. It's not like the A7 III and A7 IV in that you get a really soft 1080 feed. No, this camera has a really nice 1080 feed. And if I want to do 4K, I could also do 4K. And you just set the heat temperature to high, and you can record for a very long amount of time. If not, it's set at 5 minutes. So I do suggest you change that setting. Another thing, flaw with this camera is that it doesn't have any mounting points because it has a pop-up flash, a pop-up EVF. There's no cold shoes anywhere. It can overheat, like I said. So you do have to set the heat temperature to high. This thing can, the battery life also on this camera is terrible. You get 1 hour at most. And that is a very quick hour because you turn on the screen, you use it, you turn it off. That's how the common workflow of this thing. And that means that you just should have extra batteries. You have to have a lot of extra batteries. And that means you have a triple charger because you have to have extra batteries or something else. And I'll go over that in a second. That battery door on the bottom, it is a major struggle. If you have a Arca Swiss plate on the bottom mounted with the quarter 20 down there, that means you're stuck. You can't open that door. You have to remove the plate. It is a big problem. So to get over all of these problems, you need a cage. And will that make the camera bigger? Yes, it does. But it's still quite small, okay? So small that you could fit it into this little case right here, complete with cage and even more. And so you have to get the cage to access the camera door. You should get that cage because it gives you more mounting points. But this cage I have right here doesn't have a cold shoe, and I made my own cold shoe mount because I wanted the cold shoe to mount the Rode Wireless Pro exactly the way I have here. And because it's mounted in such a way that it preserves the most amount of space. I mean, this space right here I could use for a hand grip, but there's a good chance that I can get around this just by grabbing the top of the cage as a hand grip. This allows me to put the entire setup in here. Okay, but there's more. Okay, so at the bottom of the camera, I also have a Joby micro tripod. And this thing is just so tiny, but it lets me set the camera anywhere I need to, just lay it close to the ground or on a stool. It's just so handy to have this thing, and it's on the camera all the time. And now I have a camera that has a tripod, that has a Rode mic system, that has a filter mounted onto it, and that has continuous power, and I can fit it all in this Amazon Basics case, or if you're getting the real deal, it's a Case Logic case around this size. It's a small case. And imagine having your entire travel setup in this small case. Camera filter, tripod, mic wires, transceivers and receiver in both pockets, all inside of this small case. That is such a powerful system to have that takes the absolute most minimal amount of space. Granted, there's other devices that can take just about as little of space, like the iPhone 15 Pro, the G Pocket 3. But those are different devices, and they won't give you a focal range of 24 to 200, all within the sensor size of 1 inch. They won't give you that type of consistency. They won't give you that type of look that you may be looking for. What I like about the RX100 Mark VII is not the trash style menu, but it has tactile buttons, controls, dials. I can control this camera in full manual if I want to. I have the spinny wheel in the front. I have the My menu where I can hold it and adjust the ISO. I can adjust the white balance on the fly. I can adjust the aperture, shutter speed via physical dial. It makes so much of a difference when you're trying to adjust a camera that is small with a small form factor, imagine trying to do all of that on the Pocket 3. It'd be a bit of a bear. Okay. And if I want to do it quicker, I can just lock exposure as well. So I have that on the custom button. It's just so much faster and intuitive if you're a shooter. It's not joyful in that Pocket 3 type of way, in that it's so just simple to use. The Pocket 3, you just turn it on and record, do everything in auto, and you're done. But with the RX100, you have stuff that is done manually. And because you're doing it manually, there's a good chance that you can up your production quality, and you just feel better about assembling stuff all the right way. Having shutter speeds where you want it, having ISO where you want it, having the reach, the focal length, the range where you want it. And that's what makes this camera great. So going back to the price, this is quite an expensive camera. $1,300. Or you could get on the used market for $900. I may have paid quite a bit less. I believe I paid $700 the first time. And then I took part into this involuntary loaner program in California called burglary. Yes, burglary. Yeah, that sounds about right. So I had to get myself another RX100, and to my surprise, the price went up. Now, you'd be thinking, poor guy with camera, he just spent even more money on this camera. But it's not really that bad of a deal, because if the price went up when I bought this camera again, that means that this camera price, it's 5 years old already, and the used prices are going up. That means that I could probably own this camera for a very long time, and when I sell it, I'll break even. But I'll probably never sell it. I'll probably participate in the involuntary loaner program before that, being a Californian. But because of that, this camera has great value. It has greater value than you know. It is out of supply. And because if it's out of supply and there's nothing like it, there's nothing to replace it, the price goes up over time. It's just kind of odd to think about cameras that go up in price, but this is one of them. So if you're worried about that, then I mean, it's a lot to front out. I'll give it that. Even $900 for a used camera, it's a lot of dough. But if you can reasonably sell it after you've enjoyed it, then it's a pretty good deal. Anyhow, that's all I got about this camera. It is spectacular. I love it. And yeah, I really did get it stolen, and I bought another one. And so here I am using it on vacation once again. That's all I got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to like, subscribe, share. See you in the next one. Take care.